friends, welcome to another class on the Kimberbell mini quilts. This time we're going to be going into August, and this one is just absolutely adorable. This gets me so excited for summer, and who doesn't want to be at the beach, right? So let's keep that reminder in our homes by making this adorable mini quilt. As we take a closer look, you're going to notice first off that flamingo. Oh my goodness, how sweet is that to have the glittery pink on there. It just kind of adds that extra sheen. Very, very fun. And so that could be done in one hooping or two hoopings, depending on what size hoop you have. Then we have the little beach tote. I love this one. Now this one is also done in two hoopings because we're going to make the beach bag first by itself, and then on the second hooping we actually add it into the applique block. So I love the little beach towel that's hanging out. It's dimensional with the adorable sunglasses hanging from it. Go down below and we've got the darling umbrella with the vintage swimsuit. Oh my goodness, I love a vintage swimsuit. I think it's absolutely adorable and it's absolutely perfect for this block. And then of course we end with the sentiment of dip into summer. You can't get anything better than that. So, are you ready to get started? Let's do this. For those of you who may be struggling with cutting instructions, I want to remind you that we have previous instructions and done with the video on how to do the cutting. Kimberbell makes it so very simple to be able to have the diagrams found right here in the instruction book, and if you just lay it out, go step by step, you'll have this little mini quilt cut out in no time at all, and it really is fairly easy to do. All right. Of course, you want to make sure you have the embellishment kit to go along with this, because this is where you're going to find the glitter applique sheets and anything else you might need that adds that little extra touch to the August mini quilt. All right, so for today's lesson, let's go ahead and begin with the beach bag. As I mentioned, we are going to be doing it in two different hoopings. The first hooping is a 4x4 hoop. The second one, we're going to go a little bit larger. Now, on the 4x4 hoop, what it tells us to do is to hoop with two pieces of wash away stabilizer. Why is this important? Well, there's some heavy stitch out here, and we want to make sure that we can wash it away once it's all done so that we can put it into our second hooping. Let's go ahead and begin. So the first thing I need to do is, of course, wake up my screen. And let's take a look. I'm looking for KD 5136, the 4x4 beach tote. I'm going to press that and hit set. Now there's no background quilting going on here. We're simply just making the tote all on its own. So I will go ahead and hit embroidery. From here you can see that there's a placement outline. And so with my two pieces of wash away stabilizer, I'll go ahead and place my 4x4 hoop into the machine, just like this, and begin to stitch out. As you can see here, this has been stitched out, and that's the placement line for where to place my bag fabric. Now, one thing I want you to also pick up here is the fact that I took this 4x5 inch piece of fabric and I actually added some fusible backing onto the back of it already, just to give it a little more stability, and then I folded it in half. Now with this fold, you're going to place it right along the top side of the line right here, and just line it up, just kind of centered, and then I'll use a little bit of paper tape right here to be able to just hold it in place. Now when I take it back to the machine, it's going to go ahead and stitch a little scallop right here. That's going to be for the bag handle, and it will stitch the tack down stitch for the bag. Something to be sure to make note of in the instructions, I'm on page 11 for those of you following along, is that right here it tells us that yes, indeed, we have stitched the tack down line. However, unlike regular applique, we usually trim along that that tack down line. This time we're not going to do that. This is simply to show us placement for when it goes into the other hooping. However, we do go ahead and just cut out this little scallop right here at the top. So just go ahead and take your scissors and you're going to trim right up close to the stitch line, of course, without cutting over top of the stitch line. And this is the only thing that we are trimming at this time. Okay. The next part of this design is that I'm going to stitch out the handle. And so I am going to change my thread color to be a mustard color to match the bag. And it's also important that at this point we also change our bobbin color to match as well. So I've already gone ahead and pre-wound my bobbin, and you'll see here that I have matched up both the top and the bobbin thread. And that's because this is a three-dimensional handle. You're going to be able to see it from the front and the back, so that's why we change thread colors. I am going to remove my bobbin that's currently in and just substitute it for that mustard color. And at the same time, I'm going to change my thread color to be the mustard on top as well. Now that my handle's been stitched out, the rest is pretty straightforward. All we're going to do is continue to change our thread colors so that we actually have the sunglasses as well as the little kerchief hanging off to match exactly how it's pictured there. So, of course, you can use any thread colors you want. I've chosen to use what's listed, which is the blue and the white for the sunglasses and then the pink for the kerchief. So, very easy. Let's go ahead and just keep plowing forward by just changing out our thread colors with these filled stitches, and then we'll be finished with the first part, part A of the beach tote. And there you have it. The top of our bag is all done. I'm now going to go ahead and remove the tape here. Just kind of set those aside to be used at a later time. And I will remove the design from the hoop. Now, what do we do with this extra stabilizer? Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to trim it away as close to the stitch line as I can. Be very careful not to trim away at those threads or your fabric. And then what's going to happen is you just want to go ahead and submerge this in some water for about 20 seconds is all. And it will actually all completely dissolve away, which will be really nice. Now, if you want this little handle to be just a little bit stiffer, what my recommendation is to not actually wash away all of the stabilizer in its entirety. Of course, you won't see any, but the more you wash it out, then the flimsier it's going to become. So my tip is to actually go ahead and wash it out. In fact, I think I'm going to even remove a little bit of this here right in the middle of this handle. And then again, I'm just going to submerge it into some cool water and allow that wash away to dissolve. All right. And then what I want you to do is just set it down. If you need to put a book on top of it or something just to block this, you certainly could do that. And let it dry so that it's ready to go for our next hooping. So I just finished washing this away, and you can see that it looks pretty good. However, this little handle is a little ski-wampus, and I just am feeling like I want to do something to help this little guy out a little bit. So the best idea that I could come up with in my mind was I needed something round, perhaps a coin. Of course, I've got plenty of buttons around, right? So I just grabbed a button from my button jar, just tried to find one that was about that size. And you can see here that I'm just pushing on this a little bit just to help give it a little bit more structure. And then I'm going to do one more thing, and this may seem a little strange, I'm going to take some Mod Podge, actually. I was trying to think of what could I use to actually stiffen that. Now, you know, you could use a starch perhaps, but I really kind of think that this is going to work. So I'm going to give it a go, see what happens here, and just give it a little brush with my sponge brush here. Again, I'm just trying to create some stiffness in that handle and see if it just holds its shape a little bit better. So, and then you can see I'm just giving it a little nudge on the button just to, again, hold the shape. So that's just a little tip I have for you. We'll see how this works. Okay, and it doesn't take very long to dry. It just takes a few minutes. And I think it will be worth it. I think it'll definitely be worth the effort. Yeah, I'm already seeing progress here. And I'm liking the way the handle is coming together. Okay, so I'm just going to allow that to dry for a few minutes. And while that dries, I will get ready for my second hooping. So with my second hooping, it's called a 4x4. However, if you take a really close look at the instructions that you see pictured here, the actual size of the background quilting design is 4.5 by 4.5. Well, that means it's not going to fit into your 4x4 hoop, correct? Because it's got to be smaller than a 4x4 hoop in order to fit into a 4x4 hoop. So we do need to bump it up a little bit on our hoop size if you are doing background quilting. For this one, I'm going to go ahead and hoop light mesh cutaway into a 5x7 hoop size. Let's take another look at the instructions. We are now on part B. And with part B, this is where our background quilting file is going to come into place. So I want you to go ahead and pull up KDQ 323 Wavy, which is the 4x4 horizontal design. And I have my light mesh cutaway actually hooped into the 5x7 hoop. And we're just going to proceed as normal with the way we pull up these designs on our embroidery machine. Let's head over to the embroidery machine and take a closer look at what I'm talking about. Okie dokie, so let's go ahead and get out of where I just was. That was part A, and moving on to part B. I just need to scroll through to find my design. It is KDQ 323 4x4. All right, let's do that one first. And I'm gonna hit set, but before I embroider, I need to hit add. So add. Find my design on my USB stick, scroll through. There we go. Now it's time to bring on 5136, which is the beach tote, and hit set. So you can see here on the screen that the beach tote is now over top of my background quilting, which is exactly what I want. Okay, so now I'm going to hit embroidery. And let's go ahead and place my hoop into the machine. And I'm going to change out my thread color just so that you can see it a little bit better. Right now, I'm going to choose the blue. And actually, I think I'm going to keep this blue in for my background quilting. So this will actually work out pretty well. Okay, let's go ahead and watch it stitch out the placement line for the batting. Now I'll place my batting over top and do the tack down stitch. When I take it back to the machine, the next step is to do a placement outline for where to place my background fabric. Now it's time for my favorite part, and of course that is the background quilting. Let's see the magic happen. Now that my background quilting design is finished, it's time to move on to the beach tote. Let's take a closer look at what's happening here on the screen. You can see up here in my preview window that we're going to do a filled stitch for the basket as well as part of the handle. So what you want to do is you want to make sure and change your thread color out now for that same color you used in part A. So that's the mustard on this one. And let's go ahead and stitch it out. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at what I'm seeing inside the hoop here. You can see that this has stitched out that fill design, and the next thing that's going to stitch out is the placement line and tick marks just right underneath this filled area, which is going to help me to know where to place that first part, part A of the bag onto. So I'm going to go ahead and keep the same thread color in and just go ahead and begin. With my piece, it's not quite dry yet, but I'm going to be a little impatient here. I'm going to line up the tack down line here with the diagonal line right here and the fold along with the horizontal line on both sides. So let's go ahead and do that. And then you'll see that your handle, your bag handle, is going to fall right over top of the other side. And let's place a few pieces of paper tape for good measure. The next stitch that's going to happen is the tack down stitch for this, coming right along here. Then we'll go ahead and trim it, and the satin stitch will be next to finish it off. Let me show you something that happened here that I am not quite sure about. This stitched out great. This one stitched out great. This one is a little off, and so if that happens to you, don't be afraid to just go ahead and trim that out for just a minute, because you'll be happier if you do, I promise. And I'm not going to trim out the whole thing, but it must have been that I just didn't place that exactly right where I needed it to go. So I'm just going to pull out those threads here. Let's take a look. All right, just trim that up. Okay. And one of the best things you could do is actually, let's grab a thumbtack, if you will, and I'm going to place a thumbtack down here in that corner where my placement line is, and then I can put it exactly through there. Let's see if I can line this up a little bit better. All right, I've got my thumbtack here, and I'm just going to come right here on the back side and place it where it needs to go. Now, if you can see here, my thumbtack is pointing up. This is a great technique when trying to do perfect placement on things. I will often have a thumbtack handy because I'm just struggling with where that tack down stitch is going. So you can see that I've got the thumbtack pointed up, and now I'm going to make sure and just fidget my piece of fabric a little bit. See, if I were to go straight there, it would actually not fall into that corner. So I want to be sure, and that's going to mean just a little more tugging on this end. And I'm so close. There we go. Okay. Now that I know that that is in place, there we go. Everything's lined up. I'll go ahead and make sure everything's lined up here. Yep, that looks good. That looks good. And now I'll place my tape down once more. All right, so there's always ways to get this figured out, and it's certainly okay to unpick a machine embroidered seam. All right, Let's put on another one for good measure. Okay, now before I take this to the machine, of course, we want to remove this thumbtack. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Place that aside. And now let's see if we can get a little bit closer on that stitch out. Now when I do that, I need to back up a few steps on my machine, right? Let's take a look at what's happening here on the screen. I think I can go back just a few steps and I can see my needle moving. There we go. So I just went back a few, just enough to be able to cover over it on top again. And I'm going to hit OK, and let's see what happens. Much better. I feel good about that. I feel like, okay, now when I trim it, it's close enough. It might not be exact, but it's close enough that the satin stitch is going to cover over both, which is exactly what we want. And let's go ahead and just trim away. We're only trimming the 3 sides. You're going to have those tick marks there. I'm just going to trim those away. And finish cutting. All right. Whew, we did it. And do a little bit closer of a trim. And now when I take it back to the machine, the satin stitch will go over all 3 of those edges. The final stitch is just the trim guidelines. So if you already did background quilting, you really don't have to do this step. However, I'm going to go ahead and show it regardless because it's not a bad idea to have kind of a double measure check, right? So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that out, and you'll see why that's important here in just a moment. Alrighty, my block is complete. Let's head over here to the cutting table because I need to square this baby up. So I'm going to go ahead and remove from the hoop. Okay. What I want to do is take my orange pop rulers, because this is a 4.5 by 4.5 perfect square on the inside here. And all I have to do is just line this up with the lower L and then the upside down L right over here. And I'm just lining it right up from corner to corner. And I can see that this is now centered exactly where it needs to be in my 4.5 by 4.5 inch square. However, I'm going to add an additional square on top of that, an orange pop ruler like you see here. And I like to do this when I'm cutting whenever possible, just because I like to have a little bit more of a surface to hold on to. So I'm going to take that even one step further and add the final orange pop ruler over top of that. You can clearly see here that I have lots of surface area to put my hands. And I'll take my rotary cutter. And the thing that I recommend the most to people when they struggle with orange pop rulers, I always say get a rotating mat. No matter what you do, get a rotating mat. It will make a world of difference. Okay. Then I'm going to insert that blade right into the corner channels here. And I start from left and go around. Now, if I were left-handed, I would start over this way and move around. Okay, but because I'm right-handed, I'm going to place it here on the left-hand side, turn my wheel here, place it inside the groove there, and just very carefully take your time doing this. And you're riding that blade right up against the edge of the ruler. Okay. One more cut into that corner and all the way through. Okay, I'm going to lock my blade and let's see what just came out. Take a look. It's all done. Woohoo! Very exciting stuff. Now, I'm going to share with you a couple thoughts I had during this process as well. Let's sit down and take a look at this for a minute. That handle is kind of bothering me a little bit, just a little bit, not too much. I don't have to be so particular, but do you see how it just hasn't held the shape as much as I wanted it to? I think in hindsight, and I'll make sure that we make note of this in the video, that if I were doing this block again, I think I would go over this handle 2 times with my stitches. I really think it just needed a little extra stability on this. Now, the Mod Podge definitely worked. I find it nice and stiff, which is exactly what I wanted. But I do think that if I were to do the block again, I would probably go over that 2 times. I would still use my button to just kind of block that out. I would still use a little bit of Mod Podge to just make that a little bit stiffer, and I would be good to go. But you know what? That isn't so bad, is it? Nah, I think it looks great. So you'll notice that this has an opening. Yay, how cute is that? So this is where we're going to place the towel, and we don't need to really worry about placing the towel right now. That doesn't come until the very end. But because we're on this video, let me go ahead and show you how the towel is done, because it's actually really, really easy. You do need to change over to a sewing machine in order to do this. But I have my pink striped fabric right here. What you want to do is you're just going to fold it in half, right sides together. Just give that a little finger press here. I'm going to take it over to the sewing machine and sew 1/4 inch seam allowance on the top and a 1/4 inch seam allowance on the bottom. I'll go ahead and turn it right side out and then press it. And I'll take you to that point, and then we'll come back here and see what we need to do next. I was in embroidery mode. Because this is a dual machine, I can easily switch over to my sewing mode. I'm going to do that right here. I hit sewing, and I do need to change my presser foot, but it's easy peasy. Set my machine up for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and let's go ahead and sew the top and the bottom. I'm going to clip my corners a little bit just to remove the excess fabric. I'm just going to use the blunt edge of my tweezers here just to push out the corners. Okay, there's that. And let's take it over to the ironing station and give it a good press. With my fold on the left-hand side, all I have to do is begin rolling from the bottom right and just continue to roll this up. Easy. Just like that. And then we can either tack it down with some needle and thread, or you could even use some glue to do that. And then once your entire quilt is finished, just go ahead and insert that right into the bag, having it stick out. Isn't that so fun? I love it. Very, very cute. Very clever, Kimberbell. We love everything that you do. Did you enjoy today's video? I sure hope so. Be sure to post your pics. We can't wait to see them, and post them all over social media using the hashtags #MyGirlfriend'sQuiltShop and #Kimberbell. That would be wonderful, so that we can cheer you on and be excited for your progress and your success. If you enjoyed the video today, I hope you'll share it. Be sure to like and subscribe, as well as share our video right here on YouTube, and be looking forward to more videos to come.